Okay, friends, we are continuing this week looking at 8, and again, by the end of the week, we'll be a little bit in to chapter 9. Lots of healings taking place. We talked about one healing on Monday. Since then, we've read about some others, and what I want to dig into today is two stories in the middle of this reading, in the middle of chapter 8, that aren't healings. They happen in the midst of all of these other ones, these other healings. So what are these two things doing here, and what can we learn from these as we're, again, getting a sense of who this man, Jesus, is? Alex talked about kind of the overall structure of all this, and I think that is really, really helpful. Now let's dig in specifically to what's happening in verses 18 through verses 27. Okay, so in 18 through 22, we get a interaction with Jesus with two would-be followers of him. Two people who seem to genuinely want to follow after him, but hit some stumbling blocks. So what's happening here? Now, when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. What does that mean? Well, we're talking about the other side of the Sea of Galilee here. So here's a picture of the Sea of Galilee. The coast that you're looking at across the lake is the east side. That is likely what Jesus is referring to here as the other side. That eastern coast over there is mostly an area of Gentile settlements, so non-Jewish settlements. So far, he spent most of his time among other Jews. Now he's going over to the other side. That context is really important because it tells us a couple of things. One, they're going into a foreign land, which, if you've ever traveled internationally, brings with it an increased level of kind of uncertainty, at times some anxiety, rather than just driving down the road, crossing the border into another state. So even though they're not going far, it feels like they're going far because they're stepping into, they would be, a different kind of culture. And then two, there is the physical relocation. So far, people have been able to just follow Jesus around in this one kind of tiny little area. Now the bar is raised because they're actually going to pack up and they're going to travel. So you see here that what's happening is that what it means to follow Jesus, the bar is being raised here. A scribe came up and said to him, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." So he's like, "Look, I'm in." Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man," that's the title he's taken on for himself, "has nowhere to lay his head." So I just need to let you know, if we're going, I just need you to know, it's not going to be easy. We're not staying in a nice old B&B over there, right? You come with me. Things are going to be hard. In fact, there are going to be times when we got nowhere to lay our heads, where we are not going to be welcomed. People won't be bringing us into their homes, and we're actually going to see this on Friday, but a healing that takes place there. Jesus' healings have been welcomed so far. I just need you to know, things are going to get tougher. And another of the disciples said to him, so the term disciple here that Matthew's using isn't exclusive to the 12 disciples. This is just someone who is seeking to follow after, to learn from, to be like Jesus. "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." Jesus said to him, "Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead." What in the world is Jesus up to here? A little bit of context I think is really, really helpful. Remember, we have culture gaps between where we are today as 21st century Westerners and where they were then as first century Jews living in Palestine. Sometimes we read things that were said then and we think we know what they mean because of our context, and we just don't. Here's a little bit of context. What we picture is that his father has just died and he's got to go to the funeral. Unlikely that that's the case, and here's why. People were buried very, very quickly. You didn't have preservation practices in the way that we do now. People were buried very, very quickly. And upon the death of someone, family members, especially a son, would have had responsibilities that would have kept them close to the deceased. So likely the son, if his father had just died, would have been sitting over watch with the family over the body. If his father had just died, the funeral was imminent, he's not hanging out with Jesus in that moment. Likely what is happening here is that this is an idiom that tied to I've got some responsibilities to keep as long as my father is alive. And as long as my father is alive, I need to tend to these responsibilities. But then, once I've buried him, once my father has passed, then I'll be freed up from some of the concerns of this world, and I can follow after you. Likely, something like that is what's happening. So then what Jesus is noticing in this man is that his discipleship, his willingness to follow, his willingness to sacrifice in order to walk in this way, to walk on this narrow path, that his willingness to do that is not at the pitch that it needs to be. So Jesus is challenging him to go at a whole another level. Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead. Now talking about like spiritual life. So those who are not following me, like that aren't fully alive in what I'm doing in the kingdom, look, like it doesn't mean don't have a relationship with them. That's not what's happening here. But you need to set aside those concerns that everybody else has and come with me and come to life in a new way. You can stay here on this side of the Sea of Galilee and tend to the concerns of the world the way that everybody else has. Or you can come with me and experience a newness of life. Remember, if we want to make a difference, we have to be willing to be different. Don't be like everybody else. I know that you've got concerns, but come on, come with me, and you will see new things that will bring you to life. Oh, that's making some sense. And then briefly, we get into this next story about Jesus calming the storm. What's happening there? So they get in the boat, they go over to the other side. Along the way, the storm comes up. I won't read through all of it, but I love kind of a bottom line that we can draw out of this. What we see here is that in the midst of this storm, most of those on the boat are like losing their minds. But Jesus stays calm. One of the things that I respect most about people are people who, when there's chaos around them, they're able to maintain a level of calm. And just a simple truth that I try to come back to a lot, whether it's big chaos around me or just the kids being chaotic around me, it's just this simple truth. The storm around you does not have to become a storm within you. We think that if there's chaos around us, we will necessarily become chaotic on the inside also. We think that if there's drama around us, that we necessarily will become dramatic also, but it doesn't actually have to be that way. Here Jesus is in the midst of a storm, remaining calm. The storm around us doesn't have to become a storm within us. Jesus, in the midst of all of these people who need to be healed, you picture him calmly walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, walking through the hillside in the midst of all of the troubles of the world, bringing peace and grace and healing. How is it this week that you are being led into just the day-to-day life that you lead? Walking through the halls of the office, walking along the sidewalks in your neighborhood, phone calls with friends, to walk amongst the troubles of the world, but to calmly in the midst of them offer words of peace and hope and healing. The storm around us doesn't have to become a storm within us. And if we want to make a difference, we have to be willing to follow Jesus even when it's inconvenient, to be different. Okay, friends, we have more this week, including one more time that I'll be with you, where we'll look at the end of our reading for this week and see one more thing as it relates to these healings. God bless you, friends, and I'll see you then.